what if we could create the power of the sun on Earth? That's absolutely possible, and that is called nuclear fusion. In nuclear fusion, light atoms like hydrogen combine to form heavier atom like helium, and in this process an enormous amount of energy is released, and this energy is even more than the fission energy. Though this process is not so simple as it looks like here, there are several steps involved in between. However, this is the net process that takes place in the core of sun. Now this process takes place in the core of our sun, and this is in fact the source of energy of our sun. We can replicate this process on Earth also, because obviously it gives us a lot of energy, huge amount of energy than fission, and also fusion is cleaner than fission because very little radioactive waste is produced in this process as compared to fission, which produces huge amount of radioactive waste. So that is another challenge of managing that radioactive waste. However, there is one big challenge. This process requires enormous amount of pressure as well as huge amount of temperature to proceed. So the core of sun has huge density, huge pressure, and around 15 million degrees Celsius of temperature. The fusion of hydrogen requires that extreme pressure and temperature, and that is very difficult to replicate on Earth. So on Earth, we can only do fusion reaction if somehow we can manage around 100 million degrees Celsius of temperature that we can sustain for a considerable amount of time, so that fusion reaction can itself sustain, which is very difficult. Just to sustain 100 million degrees Celsius, that requires, extreme engineering. And in fact, we have done that. And the device that is used to sustain that extreme temperature using strong magnetic fields is called tokamak device. So this is an experimental device that we use to do fusion reaction, and we are building tokamak device in such a way that we should be able to harness the fusion energy. So as I said, tokamak device uses a strong magnetic field to confine plasma, which is at about 100 million degrees Celsius. And scientists are still working very hard on making this thing practical. Recently, tokamak reactor of China was able to sustain about 100 million degrees Celsius of temperature for around 17 minutes. So this is what we have achieved so far. And this is not yet sufficient to sustain nuclear fusion reaction. However, we are working on it, and it will be done in the near future. So in the next part, we will see the working of nuclear reactors.